Look at this, ladies and gentlemen, a new angle from my bedroom. Today, I wanted to go over some principles of negotiation that are covering some very basic stuff. Negotiation has so many different things within that practice, and there's tons of different angles that you can take it in terms of specific scenarios in which to negotiate in, specific scenarios of when to say certain things. But just as a basic thing to become aware of whenever you are starting a conversation or you're starting a negotiation, whether it be with a brand deal or you're negotiating a salary. So, very easily, I'll just tell you exactly what they are: establish clarity, invest in the relationship, lead by asking questions, bring awareness to your tone, grow comfortable with silence, genuinely want a win win scenario, and importantly, be willing to walk away. So, establish clarity. This is one that so many people avoid and so many people ignore and don't do the work to do. But this is essentially, look at it as your prep work. So understand whatever your minimum would be in a negotiation, whether that be for your job that you're negotiating for, or in the case that I'm consistently in right now, is doing brand negotiations on behalf of other people. And so establish whatever the lowest price is that you would be willing to do a deal with. And then from there, you can start to pitch higher. You can do twice that amount. You can do three times that amount and really, really be bold with it. And then from that point is where the negotiation starts. You throw a number that's super high, and then the person comes back and says, no, we can't do that. So say that my minimum is $10,000 on a brand integration, and the person, and then I go to the brand, they ask what my rate would be, or they were in the middle of negotiations, and I say, look, I usually do an integration for $17,000 if you guys are interested, or I can do an integration for $22,000. And then they might come back and say, look, that's way too high. We could negotiate something more akin to like $11,000. And then I might counter again and say I could come down to 19, and then they counter again at 15. I'm 5K above what it is that I wanted to get to, and I'm happy with that. But I'm only able to get there by really understanding what it is that my minimum is, and knowing that I'm happy to walk away with something above that number or equal at that. So many people miss this step and just go into a negotiation not really knowing what it is that they want to ask for, and that's where people mess up, because they don't have the clarity to be willing to walk away, or on where to pitch high and then negotiate down. And then the second part of the established clarity is kind of in relation with investing in the relationship, where when you establish clarity, you also want to know who it is that you're speaking with. And that comes down specifically to the individual, which is also why you want to invest in them. You want to understand who from a position is that person. What is their negotiating power? Are you talking to someone who is actually able to negotiate budgets, or is this someone who's being told what to do? And that's a very key differentiator there. And I'll touch on that in just a second. And then the other point of clarity, and the other point in the relationship investing in that, is really understanding what it is that that business or that brand integration wants. Do they want to have app downloads if you're promoting on your YouTube channel, or does that position really want to fill something where you overachieve on sales numbers or whatever it is? So really understand what it is at the role that you're applying for, and do your homework before the conversation begins, so that you can start to speak to that person, speak to them as an individual. What are their, if you want to go above and beyond, you understand that person, like, what are their career goals, what it is that they're really hoping to aim and get out of this. They're a person that exists. They're not just an email. They're someone who has their own life, so on and so forth, and they have their own ambitions. And if you can understand those ambitions, you can tweak your pitch to really establish something that they can get behind as well. You want someone to also be just as excited as this bag coming in as you are, as this project coming in. And so say if it's like a brand deal, then you have Gemma from X company reaching out, and she's starting off on a new marketing budget, and she's super nervous about how this will go. Then you can start to speak to her nervousness and really understanding what the project entails. Like, hey, I understand that this is a nerve-wracking thing for you, or it sounds like this is a nerve-wracking thing for you, and I'm really excited to be someone who proves that this is why you should be in charge of this budget, blah, 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 the things like that. So you want to establish the clarity of what the company is after, what that individual is after, who that person is. Understand as much about them as you possibly can, because another component of doing business and sales and deal making is that the person ends up wanting to work with you as a person and not necessarily as just this abstract thing of a YouTube channel or you as a unit or a number filling a position. People like to work with people and build a relationship with that person, and deals get done by how much someone likes another person. So really important, establish clarity on the company and invest in the relationship with that individual. And then throughout this entire process, you really want to lead by asking questions and not be taken for the ringer by them asking tons of questions to you. So kind of similar with this whole thing is you want to just start to get to know someone. Oh, tell me more about this project. What are your aims? What are your ambitions? Tell me more about your experience with this company. How long have you been working there? What is the worst case scenario of this marketing spend? Like, what would be the worst thing that would happen if you invested in a creator or you invested in an individual? And let me know what that would be, and then you can understand where their fears are. And then you talk about, the opposite of that question. What's the most exciting thing, or what's the most home run thing that you could get out of this in a dream world? What would be the best thing that could happen? And then you can also speak to that. So lead the conversation by asking questions, and refrain from divulging so much information in the beginning, and allow the other person to just share and share and share and share. And they can really end up giving you some really key information if you just ask questions and you listen and you're very attentive and you actively listen. There's a book called Never Split the Difference, which is phenomenal, and it teaches you actual tactical ways in which you can communicate with someone that allows them to feel like they're being heard. And just in general, it's a great book on improving communication so that you can just actually become a better communicator, which is something that the world needs in general. And a very basic principle of that is that if someone is grieving something, and this is outside of a business thing, it applies to everything. It could be your partner or it could be a friend. I just made a video on this, but the standard way of responding to that is saying I, and like, your friend comes to you with a problem in their company, and then you say, oh, I. You respond with the pronoun I instead of really allowing them more time to flush out their grievance or their issue. And so become really good at asking questions, become really good at listening, become really good at reflecting and mirroring the person, and then you can build a much stronger rapport with that person. And then this one I think is probably the most underrated and the most important thing for negotiating and just for life in general, is that the tone of your voice is what builds the relationship. It's you can say the same thing in a completely different way based off of the tone. And if you grew up with parents who often were wanting to correct your behavior, they would also say, check your tone. And you might be saying something that to you feels like you're just expressing something, but the weight of your words is carried in the sound of your voice, not in the actual spoken word. So it's something to become very aware of. And a good method with this is just to, if someone asks you something, or if you're in a situation in which it's highly stimulating or very highly intense moment, then you can take a moment, you can breathe, you can recollect yourself, which is similar with getting comfortable with silence. Is know that silence is actually your biggest ally and your biggest asset, and not something to be intimidated by. But in silence is where reflection comes. In silence is where you return the control internally, and you don't have these outbursts or these reactions that are emotionally driven. And that makes a conversation much more manageable, or much better to be done when you're speaking between two people and you're trying to navigate towards a common solution or working together. When two people are speaking in a way that is not underscored by anger or resentment or anything of that nature, then you operate much closer towards a solution. And so really the tone of your voice is so key. And then a way to improve this is, in my experience, is writing and understanding the emotions that come up when you do talk about certain things. And then just if you can start to really label that thing that comes up, that emotion, then this is where you start to build that really cool superpower of taking a breath and speaking with intention or clarity or compassion or love. And there is a really cool saying from a guy named George Mumford that I absolutely love that says, there's always space between stimulus and response. That's it. There's always space between stimulus and response. And so always remember that. You can always take a breath regardless of any situation that you're in, and you will find your beauty and your clarity. Greed is something that is often perceived as a standard for a lot of business and negotiation style interactions, but that eventually comes back to you. That eventually catches up with you. And if you genuinely want to have the other person win in the same way that you do, you'll be able to perform better in your role. You'll be able to perform better if it's an ad integration in content, and get to that point where you actually want to see the other person succeed and you don't want to just extract from them. Because if you always want that, then it will come back and then something will hit you back in life where it will extract from you. And then last but not least, definitely not least, extraordinarily important, is that be willing to walk away. If someone doesn't hit your minimum or if it doesn't feel right, just know that to say no is actually even more of a win if you can lean back on your integrity and on your principles. To compromise based off of getting money or getting a bag will also corrode your soul. And this is not what you want to be doing if you are existing. If you're here to make a positive impact by creating cool content or by working for a company that you believe in, then know that you should stand on your principles and your integrity, because ultimately when everything settles down, that's all that you will have, is the integrity that you've been able to maintain within yourself. And so know that your willingness to walk in the face of making a lot of money is oftentimes even stronger of a win than if you were to accept it or accept below your minimum, because the universe is outstanding and it is random and it is stunning. As long as you lean into the beauty of what could happen tomorrow, then you will have opportunities coming your way and knocking on your door. And so by saying no to something actually allows the door to stay open to another incredible opportunity that comes in. Have faith in that and you will succeed a lot in life. So cool principles of negotiation. Thanks for watching. Take care, y'all.